to the podcast, which is titled Product Management Frenzy and the Essence of PM. So, this podcast basically is about talking about product management, talking about the product space, and it is termed How to Product for a Reason. And so, this series is starting from today. And luckily enough, I've got Oluwatobi Omotosho here, and he's so excited and super pumped to share a lot of things, nugget experience with reality, not theoretical experiences or head knowledge, but practical things that would really help us. I'm also here to learn, so join me on this joyride as I welcome on board Oluwatobi Omotosho.
Drum
Yay!
roll.
So can we meet you, Oluwatobi?
So so I actually used to have a nickname called Drum Roll.
Oh,
In the
interesting.
past, I loved being called Drum Roll Toby. So like Drum Roll Toby because I play the drums. Now. So
Amazing. Wow, I never
right,
knew that.
yeah, actually. So that was life before product management.
I see, I
Yeah.
see, I see. Okay.
Okay, meeting me, I'm a very simple guy.
Yeah,
So I'm currently a senior product manager at a financial service company in here in Abuja. And prior to that, I had worked with a few organizations, right, in different industries. Before coming here, I worked in like an education or an edutech space, right?
yeah,
And we're building solutions, around just unlocking different possibilities for people in Africa in technology, right? And
yeah,
really just bringing because this is one of my favorite phrases, right? Africa is really approaching that digital transformation era, if
yep,
we're not even there already. And and in terms of the people, right, the people that are going to drive this digital transformation, right, a lot of
yeah,
those people are product managers. And and this is not to say that other skill areas are not great, but product managers play a very important role, right? So
mm,
I had the opportunity to work on a product that I was really passionate about. um, I'm someone passionate about teaching and learning, right? I think some of the other things I've done in the past as well has bordered around training people, right?
yeah.
uh, I used to be a software engineer,
In your
right?
past life?
In my past life. Some people find that hard to believe, but
Yeah,
um, yeah, I started out as a software engineer and then sort of transitioned into product management, and had a couple of roles. Funny enough, I started product management I was a scrum master, right? That would be
yeah.
create tasks on Jira, then I'll create everything, the backlog. Like I had
Mm.
at the start of product management, my backlog used to have like 100 tasks. I was looking
Damn,
back and wondering, like, how
how?
did I
It's like
how
a
did that happen,
dumpster.
man?
Right.
So it was so cool. Just we get a lot of ideas and want to just let's just
Pump
create this,
everything up.
add this feature, and all of that. And
Yeah.
then you don't know about like scope creep and everything.
Mm,
But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It's been an
right.
insightful journey, right? I'm still learning every single day, man. So
I mean,
um,
it never ends, right? Learning never ends,
never
especially in this career path. But that's quite interesting. I mean, you've done a lot of things. You've had a lot of experiences. Your trajectory has tilted on many fronts. Um, but
exactly,
but
exactly.
bringing it back home, what would you say a product manager does? And this is not about the whole Scrum guide saying what a product owner does, or Agile manifestos talking about agility and all of the textbooks and all. But in your honest opinion, what does a product manager do? Then that would tie strongly to what do you do as a product owner. So if you want to provide a bit of context to it, I would say, what does a product manager do? And then what do you do? How is that different from what you think an ideal product manager should do? Does that make sense? I'm trying to lump up three questions into one.
Okay. 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 Can you come with questions
So,
again
so, so
so
you could
that
start from
yeah,
this is what a product manager is meant to do based on what
right.
you've based on your experience and cross
Yeah.
industry transfer and all of that. Then this is what you currently do as a product manager. And these are the differences in between.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So that's more like in principle and in practice, right?
Exactly.
More like it. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think many people define what a product manager does, in many different ways. I've heard different definitions for what product managers do, right?
Yeah.
But if I were to define it, I would use the definition, Marty Kagan's. I'll use Marty Kagan's definition, and it is that a customer. Well, it's sort of modified. This is sort of my own modified definition. So a
Right.
product manager sort of sits um, in intersection, and when I mean intersection, I don't mean that Venn diagram, but basically driving value, right, for customers and delivering value to the business, right? And there has to be a balance. I think you can sort of sum it up to those two things, that you're serving customers as a business, and you as a product manager, you are constantly looking for ways to deliver value, to drive value for those customers,
Mm.
right? But also importantly, ensure that the business, right, there's also business value that's been created, right? You understand what the key metrics for the business is and all of that. You
Yeah.
understand the objectives and everything, right? But within this definition lies a whole lot of things, right?
Yeah.
So in
True.
practice, it is a lot of meetings first.
I saw that coming. Yeah, I agree with you, man. Totally.
Man, it is a lot of meetings. What? Like a lot of meetings.
And you come out of those meetings, you'll be like,
Eh?
before you catch your breath, you realize you are late, 5 minutes late for the next meeting, and then you have to
I'm
run
telling
off.
you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and sometimes you could sort of be caught up in, okay, are these meetings actually productive?
Mm.
But really, that in practice, what you're doing is you're a decision maker. You're making decisions, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Every decision you make basically determines the direction of the product, right? And um, even yesterday, I was sort of thinking back on some of the decisions I'd made in the week, right,
Mm.
and analyzing which one went well, which one didn't go well, and of course, yeah. So sometimes I make decisions. I'm like, shoot, no, I should have done it differently that
Yeah.
way, right? So in practice, I would say you're a decision maker, right? You're going to be working with a whole lot of stakeholders, right? From working with the design team,
Mm.
um, to working with the engineering team, to working with, like management, basically, right?
Yeah.
And depending on what company, management can be on your neck. What? you know?
Yeah.
So you're going to be working with, like, for example, for me, being in a financial service company, I work with the risk and compliance team. I work with the credit team. I work with,
Legal.
operations. I work with banking service teams. It's just a lot, right? But if you think about what I, said, in practice, you're making decisions, right?
Yeah.
And really, those decisions you make determine, direction of the product. Those decisions you make has to align with the value that you're trying to create for the business,
Yeah.
right, and for the customer,
Right.
right? And being able to understand that this is your role and finding that balance is really is absolutely important.
Yeah,
Right.
totally
I
agree with
think.
you. Yeah, totally agree. And it's quite interesting for you to mention lots and lots of meetings. And it ties
Yeah.
strongly to working with multiple stakeholders because you need some regular touch points to align, to refine, to decide, and to optimize, basically, to say this is how we are meant to go. But when you look at it from an overarching perspective, to say, I am trying to provide value for the customers. I'm trying to solve the customer's pain points while providing business value. It seems abstract in a sense. So,
Okay.
what exactly do you think a product manager brings to the table in
Mm,
creating that synergy between providing value for the customers while serving business objectives? So within that, there's a sweet spot in between. So what exactly is the need for a product manager in that sense, if you get my point?
right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. So I get your question, and I think I would try and answer this question this way. I think
Yeah.
one of the things that's coming to mind is um, how they describe product managers as mini CEOs,
Mm.
right? Of course, there's a lot of conversations around. Okay, is the product manager really a CEO? Can you really call a product manager? I
Yeah.
really call it the product manager, the CEO, because these things about the thing about making decisions, you don't necessarily have authority over a lot of people,
Mm.
right? Um, but I think where the product manager really plays an important role is for the business, aligning what the business is trying to achieve, right? Like I said before, and what the customer is trying to achieve. You are sort of playing a personal role. So, for example, with the customers, right?
Mm.
You are constantly speaking with them, right? Constantly trying to understand, okay, what are these, people trying to do and
Mm.
things like that. And not just what are they trying to do? What is the business trying to achieve, and how do we drive that value for the business from the customer's perspective? Let me see if I can give very let me see if I can give an example.
Yeah, that would be really
Okay.
helpful. I was going to mention
Yeah.
that you could give us a perspective, like a context to it, and to drive the
Yeah.
point home.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll give an example. I think I've given this example before, but let me give an example that sort of applied to me, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can really mention some. Uh, I can talk about some data, but I will just speak about it in more like an example,
Yeah.
right? So let's say, where I work, for example, right? We have like an objective. Say we want to give out loans, for example,
Okay.
right? A certain amount of loans, and you could, as a product manager, you come on board and you meet different stakeholders and they say, okay, build this thing to give out loans. Do you
Mm.
understand?
Yeah.
Right. So your role as the product manager is not just to go directly to build that, right? How you probably approach that is, okay, why are we giving out loans, right?
Exactly.
What are we?
Amazing. Always
you
ask
know,
the why.
exactly.
The
you know,
bitter question. Nobody wants to be asked why. Be like, just get it done, And say,
exactly,
why?
exactly. You know, and it happens a lot of times because
Mm.
and this is the thing. Product managers face this a lot, but
Yeah.
understanding how to respond would help. Would really help. So why are we building it,
Mm.
right? And you're going to face resistance when you're asking why, especially when you're asking why from people that are
Mm.
sort of above you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But do you know this is something like I always say that businesses, they never do anything without knowing why. Like there's a reason why they're
True.
doing it.
Yep.
They might not tell you that this is what we're trying to achieve, right?
Mm.
Because from the top they're like, okay, we want to achieve this, let's do this. And
Yeah.
that let's do this is what they transfer down to everybody
Mm.
else,
Yeah.
right? So but they always have why. So you as the product manager, so myself now, I'm going to have to be very diligent to find out, okay, what are they trying to really get done,
Mm.
right? Of course, the idea might be great, but without that context, I would not know what to measure. I would not know how to track. I would not know how
Mm.
to, really track. Is, is this successful or not?
Yeah.
Right. So we want to give out loans. So maybe I dig deeper and find out, okay, we're trying to drive revenue, right?
Yeah.
And maybe when we give out a certain percentage of loans, or maybe they even have a goal. Maybe we want to give out so billion in loans, for
Mm.
example,
Yeah.
right? And that's supposed to drive a certain amount in revenue. Okay, right? You've established the business objective. This is what we're trying to drive. I gave an example. I gave an example of Sundar Pichai, a LinkedIn post I
Yeah.
put out, where when he was trying to build Google Chrome,
Chrome.
right?
Yeah.
We were trying to make the objective was that we wanted to make Chrome the best browser, and how we measure
Mm.
that is that really grown the number of users that we have, right? Over time. So they were at
Yeah.
2 million, and then we grew it, from there to 100 million. So it's very important. I think this is like product management 101, right? Understand the business objective before doing anything else, right? So I would understand that, right? And that would now inform the strategy. Okay, how do we
Yeah.
approach it, right? And then there's a lot of things to, cater for. But then you go to the customers and you're trying to understand, what are the customers trying to achieve? Does the customer want a loan? If they want it, why do they want it, right? How long should the loan go for example, right? Do they want a short-term loan, a long-term loan? Does a long-term loan work for the business in terms of, the risk and things like that,
Mm.
right? So, what strategy are we going to develop to help us achieve this, right? Is important. So when you work from there, and I talked about metrics because you're going to be able to track, right? You're going to be able to track quickly. Okay, are we actually moving the needle when it
Yeah.
comes to the metric? I think the reason why I like to talk about objectives a lot is because I've worked without objectives and I understand how it is. You're just going to be going in so many directions,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because today you wake up and do this. Today let's give loans. Tomorrow let's do this. Tomorrow let's do that, right? Without having a certain direction. So I don't know if I've answered that question, but I think
Yeah.
specifically you as the product manager, you are sort of creating that creating that bridge between what the business is trying to achieve, right? By understanding, by creating a strategy that works, right?
Yeah.
By having a roadmap of what are we going to build that helps us to reach these outcomes, right? And then understanding what the customers, what is value to the customers, how does it meet the business goals, right? So in terms of customer, it could be what types of loans are we going to give, things like that, right?
Mm.
And all of that. Let me stop here because I know we still have
Yeah.
a
Yeah. I
lot to talk
mean,
about. But
it's quite amazing how well you've put it, because this is the reality, right? This is something that people would never tell you if you're outside the system. When you get into the system, you start noticing resistance. If you want to do your job right, you start noticing
right,
pushback from people.
yeah,
Everybody advocates for change, but nobody wants the inconvenience that comes with change. And so when a
exactly,
senior executive says, we need to build this, and you start asking the right questions that should get you to where they want to get to, they start
yeah,
feeling a sense of
yeah,
as though you're trying to probe their intellectual capacity. Like, are you trying to
right,
say I've not thought this through before asking you to do it? So when you tell me,
yeah,
why am I trying to let you do this thing? It's like, dude, are you thinking straight? And I don't want that kind of energy, No, but
right,
this is the
yeah,
reality. You can agree with me, right? It's something that happens
exactly,
in the industry,
yeah,
practical experience that happens.
yeah,
So what you said also strongly ties with what I have this analogy about solving problems. Like, the why of the problem
mm-hmm.
in a business setting, the why of the problem lies strongly with the product manager. You need to know
Yeah,
why. Otherwise, we'll
mm-hmm.
spend time and money, which are your resources, building the wrong thing that nobody wants.
Exactly,
Then
exactly, Yeah.
The what is like the business objective that lies strongly between the product manager and the business owners, the people that are making the core decision for the business direction. You need to
Yes.
understand what exactly are we trying to
Exactly.
achieve here. Then the how is like
Yeah.
between the product manager and the technical team. How do we get there? So you strategize, they implement, tell you what sort of infrastructure is required to get that solution running.
Mm,
So, but getting that into the mindset of the team is quite difficult because there's like
right.
this misplacement of priorities, if you get what I mean. People want to
Yeah.
step into
Yeah.
other roles, people want to step into other functions, and when you're trying to do your job the right way, you keep getting some resistance and some. So I feel
Exactly.
one core thing that a product manager has to have, whether they like it or not, is empathy and
Mm,
resilience. You have to be able to empathize with both your
yeah.
business owners, every stakeholder, your customer, your users,
Yes.
and be
Exactly.
resilient
Exactly.
enough to pull
Exactly.
through because you keep getting a lot of pushbacks, a lot of blockages on the way,
Pushback. Exactly.
and you
Yeah.
have to just power through and make people see reasons why. Because at the end of the day, it's a negotiation, right? You have to negotiate.
Yes.
Okay, if you must compromise on this, then you won't be able to get this. It's like the trade-off on quality, cost, and time, right? If you compromise on one, the other two won't be as good. If you compromise, if you make the other two good, one wouldn't be as good. So you have to just find
Yeah.
a balance,
Exactly.
which is a difficult job to do. So
It
now this
is.
brings me to
It
my
it is.
this brings me to my
Yeah.
next
It really
question.
is.
This
Yeah.
brings me to my next. I'm tempted to ask you a question that I have not planned, but I know that's going to take us on a long trip. Maybe when
Right.
we have
Okay.
more time and you are available to join us again on this platform, I would probably throw that question at you. It's more
Okay.
about how do you reconcile being agile and having to do your due diligence in delivering products? Because some people feel
Right,
doing due
man.
diligence, due diligence
Man,
is
that's a
like a
tricky question.
waterfall. Yeah, it is. And I
Yeah.
know it's going to take us like an hour. It's going to take us like an hour
It is.
to handle that
Mhm.
because it's a there's a very thin line between being agile and doing due diligence and waterfall model where you have to account for all possibilities before you start anything, right?
Right.
So, but let me just hold on for now and ask you the
Okay.
next question so that we'll make
Okay.
maximum use of your time. The question about, of course, like the tag for this episode says product management frenzy. There's so would you agree that there's a frenzy, like there's a an explosion of product management, interest in product management? Do you agree that that even happens? That is really happening right now? Because if you ask me, I would say yes, but I would really love to know your own perspective. I think your network is frozen. Anyway, while Toby is restoring his network, I would just like to point out that the reality of the market is that as a product manager, you just have to know what exactly needs to get done and go for it with all resilience and grit and passion, of course, because after a very long time, you begin to feel tired, weighed down by this resistance, weighed down by the blockages. People keep asking you questions that are not so relevant. And you have to appreciate the fact that and empathize with them to know that they really just want to have a sense of what you're trying to achieve. I've had this example where I was meant to implement something at my place of work, and I needed to understand exactly how this ties to our current existing processes and what sort of value we want to get from it at the end of the day. You would not imagine how much questions stemmed out of this experience, how many people I had to talk to, how many people I had to reach out to just to get a sense. The good thing about your customers or stakeholders is that they are really interested in knowing, and answering your questions. You just have to know how to present those questions to them and get their valuable input. And asking series of questions, holding series of interviews, at the end of the day, we realized that what we wanted to implement had no direct value and was only going to cost us more. So if you as a product manager cannot really ask the why and be very resilient towards that, you would eventually spend time building things that are not really needed, things that are not really adding value to your business, or even if they're adding value to your business, they are not worth the cost that it would they would incur. So it is always important, it is always essential that as it comes, you just own that aspect of knowing why that thing needs to be implemented and you follow through with it. I guess your network sort of cut you off there.
Yeah, yeah, man. I was scared because I saw you were talking. I said, "Have you been talking to them?" Because I've been trying
No,
to
no, no.
join. Sorry,
I was
sorry.
just filling in the gap before you
Okay,
returned.
right,
So yeah,
right.
back to the frenzy. Do you think there's a frenzy and why is there about product management? Like
Okay, frenzy. You mean like
like
people are
recognition and
yeah,
explosion. People just start noticing that
yeah,
there's product management field and everybody wants to go
right.
there.
Yeah, yeah. I think there is. I think there really is. And if you remember, I don't know if you've been doing anything product in like 2019, 2020. It
Yeah,
wasn't as popular yet, or
yes.
maybe not in Nigeria, or maybe we're not just as aware, right?
Mm,
But I think that a lot of companies are starting to realize that they need product managers. Before
mm,
now, it didn't used to be so, right? And even banks, right, are starting to hire product managers. And you're like, interesting, because I remember, when I was learning software engineering, and you know, I was learning, or the person teaching us then,
mm,
used to tell us about how many companies build products that nobody wants, or talk about
mm-hmm,
how people build products that are just so horrible, right? Or like user experience is bad and all of that.
mm,
And used to talk about how in terms of like the resources, the people that should build the product, to ensure that it really delivers value for the
mm,
customers are not there, right? But
yeah,
companies have really started to shift right into it, because a lot, and again, right, you would agree with me, right? We see all the statistics around about how companies fail. A
mm,
lot of companies fail, right? A
yep,
lot of companies fail because maybe most of them, maybe they have product managers, or maybe they don't, right? But somewhere in the core of the failure,
mm,
it's the absence of product management, right?
yep,
So there could be a product manager, but maybe they weren't doing it right.
mm,
Because I think that for startups, importantly, for example, if you're building a company, you as the CEO, everybody has to have a product management mindset, right?
yep. Ah, network. Okay. Let's give Toby a minute to see if the network reconnects because I think this is a very important point where product management is like the core of getting a business to where it needs to be. Otherwise, they will just build things that are not relevant. And product management is completely different from or independent from product manager role because if you have a product manager that isn't doing the job the right way, then you are lacking product management in its true sense. And that's when your business begins to spiral into the utter failure that you don't want it to go to. So I totally agree with Toby because in a lot of failed startups that we've seen, it is usually the absence of product management, being able to drive the right value for the users, being unable to drive the right value for the users, being unable to address business objectives. So what I mean here is that the first scenario is that you are not solving a real problem that a user would really appreciate, or you're not providing a solution that addresses a real pain point for your user. And your business can easily fail that way because you're just churning money and no one is using that solution. The other part is you're solving a real problem for the users, but you're not providing any business value. You're not providing, and one of the business values revenue, because every business runs on money. If you're not providing a solution that people would love to pay for, unless you are doing a philanthropical.
Man.
Oh, welcome back. So I was just buttressing on what you said while the
Okay. Right.
network was, yeah, that
Yeah.
you a lot of businesses have failed exactly because they were lacking product management. Not necessarily a product manager. The product manager could be there, but doing the job wrongly, and the business
Yeah.
could fail for two core reasons. Either you're solving customers' pain points, but you're not addressing business objectives and providing value for the business. So the business will go down,
Exactly.
lack of
Exactly.
revenue, lack of expansion and all.
Exactly.
Or on the
Exactly.
other hand, the business has a lot of money to spend, but nobody is using the solution that they've created. So you burn out and run out of money at the end of the day. So please go
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. I'm really sorry about the network. I think I've switched to a better one now, so
Okay.
should be good. So and very good point. Now, this is something that I tell product managers. A business needs to sustain,
Mm,
right? A business needs to sustain, and for a business to sustain, there has to be value coming in, right?
mm-hmm.
Businesses are out to serve customers, but if the business without money, the business is going to die. You
True.
know, so you as the product manager, you play a very, very important role, right? Sometimes it feels like a lot of pressure, right? Because you play a very important role in ensuring that the business is able to sustain, continuously serve customers, and of course internally sustain as a business, right?
Yeah.
And that's why things like understanding, okay, what's the business model? What is revenue? And how do we sort of impact on those metrics? Because whatever you do impacts
Mm,
on the metric that helps the business continue. I'll
uh,
give this other example, right? There are some companies, and I like to talk about banks. I'm not going to mention any banks' name, but
go on.
talking about people resources now
I'm
to
sorry,
build
we,
a
we
lot
we
of
missed you
features.
for like a minute there. I think your
Okay,
network froze. Yeah. We
yeah.
lost
So
you
I was
when you
saying
talked
that.
about banks.
Yeah. Okay. So and you say so at banks, you look at some of some banking products or just some legacy products, and you see how much they've spent. You kind of imagine all of the features on those products and how much
Mm,
resources would have gone into it, but how much impact is it making?
mm,
Right. I had a student that was working with one of such companies, and he got close to stakeholders enough to understand that that there are so many features on the product right now that nobody uses. Do you
wow.
understand? And I like to think about it like this: every feature you build, right,
Mm,
has a cost. You as a
yep.
product manager need to understand. If you're working with engineers, say you're working with three engineers, they are going to be paid monthly.
Mm-hmm.
Automatically, they are being paid every day, right? Or if you break it down on an hourly basis, they are being paid. So if you have like three engineers working on a particular product feature, you should understand the cost. The cost it would take for those people to work on it for as long as it would take to work on it.
Mm,
Now, if you're not smart enough to understand what is the cost of building this and what is the value it's going to generate, this is why there's this is why people build products that fail, because if we do an analysis
like
of the cost and
co-
value,
Cost
right?
benefit
Yeah,
analysis. I've heard that a
exactly.
ton of times.
Exactly. So but how many product, and that's the thing, how many people understand this? So keep building features and keep building features without understanding that every feature you build has a cost. The cost of
Yeah.
keeping that feature running, right, on your
Mm.
servers, for example. And this is really going down into the detail, right?
Yeah.
The cost of time, the time it takes on you as a product manager to build a feature, right? And ending up, for it to end up that nobody uses it. I think I'm really speaking passionately about this because I built a product that did not work or that
Ah,
failed. So I understand,
and
man,
there's that
that
opportunity forgone because of what you should have implemented that would have yielded value, but you left that to build this
exactly.
failed thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And let me just add this. Let me just add this, So, we started this by saying understand the objectives, understand the why. Now, okay. So many times, for example, I've faced this resistance. You talked about resistances that you face. I face this resistance sometimes of, wanting to do research, for example,
Mm.
before starting work, because sometimes stakeholders take research as a waste of time. Like, come on, man,
Exactly.
just do this
Just
thing,
get it done. You're wasting time.
like, So, and of course, we also have to be empathetic. You
Mm.
need to understand that your stakeholders might not just be saying for you to do it because they don't like research. Maybe, they are thinking of, okay, how do we get this thing out? How do we start, driving value for the
Yep.
business? So many times you need to be able to put on the shoes of the people you're working with.
Mm.
We hear about putting on the shoes of your customers. You need to
Yeah.
be able to put on the shoes of the stakeholders, see what they're seeing, right? Understand, okay, maybe they're investors and investors are asking for, do you get what's
Mm.
going on, right?
And they
When are you
have
pushing this
timeline.
out? So if you see from those perspectives, you sort of understand. But this is the thing, right? This is the thing. There's always a difference. You have to do that preliminary work. I don't know who. There's this quote. I think it's Albert Einstein that quoted this: that if I had a problem to solve, I spend 99% of the time trying to understand the problem,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And 1%, to actually, build a solution for that problem. Am I correct? So
Yeah.
as the product manager, you want to be that person. You want to don't jump to solutions, right? You don't want to
Mm.
jump to solutions because this is why products fail. You want to understand what will this cost me, right? Understand what is the value we drive. Again, value, value, value.
Yeah.
It's really important. Yeah.
I think you've rightly outlined why businesses have just realized that, hold on a minute, I think we need a product manager, right?
Yeah.
And this has increased the visibility into the field. Like over the past
Yeah.
2 years, it has gained so much recognition that virtually everybody wants to be a product manager, or
Right now.
a ton of people are self-acclaimed product managers without knowing the first thing about product management. So do you think the field is overhyped as it is? Because a lot of people have this, they think it's an ivory tower. They think it's that place where you come to a fortress of solitude. If you want to enter
Yeah.
the tech space,
Yeah.
it's your
Exactly.
easiest way in. But I'm
Yeah.
so
Right.
sorry to inform you, I'm not a bearer of bad news, that this is not the easiest way. In fact, this is where you get to take a lot of shit dumped on you. Pardon my bad use of word. This is where you get to face. So the dynamism in product management is just crazy. So, but let me just hold up my thought and hear from you. Do you think
Okay.
it is overhyped? Like, is it overhyped with the explosion in the
Um.
field right now?
Yeah. So. I mean.
I know you want to be pragmatic about it. And overhype in this sense, let me just lay some
Okay.
baseline. Overhype
All right.
is like, are people I'm not saying are people portraying the value or the worth of product management over its actual value in business space. I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
the overhype in the sense of coming to product management is the easy way
And
into
it's the
tech, and then you're
yeah.
sorted, and then you can become a CEO. A lot of people want to become CEOs. So they'll say, let me,
Right.
since a lot of people have done it, we have tons of examples that have started from product management and became CEOs. So a lot of people, that is their primary motivation. Other people would be like, product management is the easiest way to solve a problem in a business setting. I'm not talking about
Right.
the actual value being overheard. I'm talking
Yeah.
about
That product
every
management.
other
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah.
what?
So yes. Thanks for clarifying it. Yes,
Yeah,
it is highly overhyped, right? And yeah, and I always wonder, like, where do people get the mindset that they come into product management with? Because funny enough, I had I also resisted coming to management, product management, because I thought it was going to be boring. You're going to be writing documents.
mm.
And some of my friends even made jokes and say you become a secretary and that kind of thing, right?
But aren't you though? I
you
mean,
know,
yeah, God.
and I think that truly in some organizations, product management is not practiced the way it should,
Yeah,
right? Um, like the understanding, because I've been to some organizations, and sometimes you wonder how does these people succeed because there's no solid structure when it comes to understanding what it is product management. Product management is difficult.
yeah,
And if someone like Marty Kagan, a veteran in the space, tells you that a product manager must be tech savvy, must be business savvy, must be one of the most talented persons in a company, then you should understand that it is no joke, right? Product management is difficult. I like that this is a conversation. This is not like, we trying to convince people, because
yeah,
sometimes I think another thing that has caused this is some of the product management programs, right? They want to get
yeah.
people to come in. So
True.
I've attended, and that was why, like, there was I'm not going to mention names, but there was someone I was invited to come and speak, you know, and it was Q&A sessions, and people were asking questions, and all of the answers were just, enough to convince to say, see, this thing is easy, it's a piece of cake, right?
Mm,
So I think that product management programs that have come up, I've made it, have printed a false reality about what
mm,
product management really is, and you find out if you dig deep,
yeah,
bro. If you dig deep into all of these programs, you see that there is no I don't know. There's the foundations, the
yeah,
foundation that they lay for product management
yeah.
is not deep at all, and are these the people that are gonna build the successful products, man? I don't know.
So I think that's why there's a huge turnover when it comes to product management as well. Because, like you said, a lot of people come in with straws as their foundation into product management. They have no clue whatsoever what a business model canvas is. Some of them, the major thing that is being put in the front of every enthusiast, and this is not to discourage anybody, but I think this is more
Yeah,
about
no, not at
trying to
all.
encourage people to get it right, right? If you're coming into the field,
Exactly,
get it right,
exactly.
both in terms of preliminary foundations and the mindset of what you stand to gain in product
Mm,
management. You have to have, I mean, that's the whole essence of this podcast, to let people understand the reality of product and do it the right
yeah,
way. So you can imagine that the major thing that is put in front of people is Scrum and PRDs. Nobody tells you
hey,
about
man,
understanding business context, understanding product market fit, understanding customer interviews, looking at product trials, working with multiple stakeholders, the core things that really define your day-to-day
yeah,
activity. And I feel
yeah,
that's where the hype is. And like you've rightly mentioned, these programs are all about making money. See, I told somebody one time, I said, a doctor that you go to does not see when I used to have this mindset that whenever I go to the doctor, he genuinely cares about me. I'm not saying they don't care about you, they do, but it is a job. So whatever he stands to gain from you would have to have its way. So if I come to a
exactly.
doctor and I say to the doctor that I'm feeling this way. See, even if the doctor knows that you need to just drink some water and take some rest, you'll be fine. They will tell you that, okay, I'm going to write this prescription for you. I write that prescription for you. And then they give you all those things so you can go. And they get paid for their consultancy because no hospital, and this moves into bureaucracy of organizational structures as well. No hospital would really employ a doctor that tells 95% of his patients that they are fine to take water, do exercise, rest, sleep, do this, and not get them to go to the pharmacist. Do you understand?
Exactly.
So in these
Exactly.
programs that you go to, yes, they care about adding value to you, but they also want to address their business objectives. So
I'm
any
telling you.
part that would not really favor them or make you come for the program would be abstracted from that conversation, which is why
Yeah.
this is a safe space for us to talk and say it as it really is. So
I
that's where
really
the
need to add
overhype
some.
came. Go on, go on.
Yeah, I'm really itching to add something. See,
Okay.
and this is not just Nigerian programs.
Yep.
Like, hmm,
Yep.
should I say
Yep.
this? I don't know. I don't know if I should say
Just
this.
filter. You may not say the name, but you can say
Okay,
everything
all right.
around it.
There's a product management certification, very expensive. It's in dollars. It's in thousands of dollars, right?
Yep. Go on. No, no.
I,
Who knows knows. Who doesn't know wouldn't know.
exactly.
So just go.
I met I met someone that has taken that program
Mm.
and still doesn't understand the basic things.
Mhm.
Like, I was like, interesting.
You know,
You know,
this spills into every learning industry, even universities. I'm sorry to say, there are people that have gone to university. I've had conversation with people that have studied data science in MSc that do not understand the concept of data wrangling. So it is. I'm just trying to make it fair. That well,
right? Do you know? And that's the thing. Like, people think that
mm,
once you take a certification,
yep,
you're a good product manager.
holy
Like, if
grail.
you have all this. Maybe you take AIPMM, for example, and
Mm,
then that's it. From there you are the boss,
yeah.
man. That's maybe in principle. In practice, no, man.
That's the frenzy. Like the hype is super.
So I think this also even affects product design. So people see product management, product design easiest,
Mm,
easiest way
yeah,
to get in,
yeah.
and it's that first of all, no serious company will take you seriously. And I guess this also even explains why there are so many people looking for jobs,
Mm,
right? There are so
yep.
many people. Like, I've had the opportunity to interview a number of product managers, right? I still had to hire a few of them, on my team, right?
Mm,
And you speak with people, they've worked at a company that you expect, right? You know, this company,
valuable
but then
experience.
you speak, yeah, you ask them like some basic things. Like, for example, sometimes I can ask a very simple question, like, if you build a feature and you deploy the feature, how do you know? I don't use measure, because once I
Mm,
use measure, I've given it
you've
up. I
given
say,
the
how do
answer,
you
yeah.
know if the feature is successful or not, right? And that there was one interview that I did, and the guy was saying it's customer retention. That's how you know,
What?
right? And while customer retention is a metric, that is not the answer to that question.
No.
Do you understand? Do you get? So like,
Mm,
there is some things that we are discussing right now that we're
mm,
that people might say, I've heard this thing a million times, right? Is
mm.
that, how have you done it? Right?
Yes.
If we say that what it means to be a product manager is understanding the business objective, the value, and customer value, people hear these things a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
But in practice, have you done it?
And
So
face what is inside it.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's why. I really think that's why. And I'm hoping that changes,
Yeah.
right? Soon enough. I think on my part, what I've started to tell people is, see, build portfolios. And I'm
Mm.
glad many product managers are also learning their voice to say, see, build product. I mean, work on
Portfolios.
projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, find mentors, people that actually, out there and have done it.
Yeah.
That's the best way. Read books, right?
Read books.
Uh, yeah,
Important. Very, very important. Read books. Yeah,
yeah,
so I
yeah.
know that we're pressed for time. I was just going to touch on, so let me not even go into AI. I think the topic of AI, and
Yeah.
Chat GPT that is ongoing now is it's a whole discussion in itself, right? Because
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of things that AI can do, and it scares me at some point. But I had to just recalibrate my mindset to understand. Okay, this is quite an interesting tool that will really make our work easier, basically. Because you see AIs that could tell you from A to Z, end to end, business value, business, everything due diligence for you to start a business can be done with GPT. I think over the coming weeks, I'll post out something, a PDF about someone making some queries on ChatGPT about a business setup, and he was able to
Interesting.
get ChatGPT to set up the business model canvas, revenue stream, customer retention metrics, every strategy you can imagine would take a full startup, maybe 2, 3 months or 4 quarters to deliver on. This ChatGPT was able to just provide by you giving it the right prompts and refining your prompts. So it was able to tell you exactly how you would. This is you giving it an abstract business, saying, okay, imagine this. I want to create this kind of business and this kind of business value. What would my, say, product requirement document be like, or something? And then it gives you all of those. So there are AIs, and this is not the last of it. Yeah, we've got people that are coming up with even counter AIs that will tell you or detect if a document was written by ChatGPT, if a document was written by another AI. But what this tells us is that a new wave is coming, and it's probably here, where AI is going into businesses in its core, not just automating processes, but also defining the next steps. Initially, we used to think AI and tech is just about automating processes, removing the human errors and all. But with the new wave, they are more or less defining the next course of action. And I'm not talking about just predictive analysis and all, but this is core definition of what you think only humans should be able to do. So
Right.
just to jump over that conversation because we have run out of time, I'm just going
Right.
to ask you one thing before I check if we've got any question from the audience. Otherwise, we'll close from there. My question is, what scares you the most as a product manager?
Mm. Right. What scares me the most? Yeah, because a lot of things, actually scare me. But
As a
but
product manager.
uh, as a product manager, what scares me the most? Interesting. Okay, so I think I'll just say what comes to mind right now.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the spontaneity of this conversation.
Yeah. I'll say what comes to mind right now. I think it is um but again, this should not might not necessarily be something that should scare me, because as a product manager, you are going to fail. It's just about how you sort of respond to it, right?
Yeah.
But it's
If
making
if
this.
if if I may,
Yeah.
before you continue, what scares you, even if you know it, still scares you. Does that make sense? So it's okay. So even if you know that you're going to fail,
Oh,
you're allowed to be
yeah.
scared that you fail. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Right.
So yeah, you can
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that comes to mind right now is investing so much,
Mm,
right? In investing so much resources in building something. It could be a product, a feature, whatever. Investing so much in it, and then it turns out to be an absolute failure. Like that keeps me up at night, man. You know. So you
like
know,
how?
because like building something that, so and that's why I always remind myself of the basics, man. What are the basics? What are the things that we know? But as you continue in this thing, you might feel like I already know this, so maybe I could just skip this. Like, we have to constantly remind ourselves of the basics.
Yeah,
Talk to your customers, for example. As simple as that
I
is,
swear.
talk to your customers, because sometimes you could start, of course, like I'm still learning, like we're also learning,
Yeah.
but you could start coming to this place where you're starting to get confident. So I think I know this stuff, maybe I can, make a few, but man, you
Hmm.
have to. So I think one thing that scares me the most is building something that turns out to be an absolute failure. that is just useless, right? Yeah, and yeah, pretty much. I think that's one thing, because it lies on the decisions that I make. For example, as a product manager, what how do we decide to build this or that, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But while I understand to embrace failure, I want to try and avoid building something that um, that is that is not successful. What scares you, Josh?
Oh, bro. I didn't see that coming. Yeah, I guess that's one of the things that scare me. But what scares me the most would
Yeah.
be not having a good legacy as a product manager.
Mm,
Yeah, so if
yeah, that one too.
in as much
Yeah.
as the initial
Mm,
failures scares me, they don't scare me as much as it's never a linear line, right? It's never a linear graph when we talk
yeah.
about our trajectory in career. So in as much as I'm scared that I would fail at this next project, so what happens to the next? Will I fail there as well? Will I fail there as well? So I'm looking at the cumulative graph. At the end of the day, if my line of best fit is going downwards, then I feel I've lost as a product manager, and that's a bad legacy. So what scares me the most is that at the end of the day, when I'm plotting the graph of my ups and downs, it should be progressive. So it tends in a positive direction. So I think that's my major fear. You're muted.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, man. Actually, I think you should hit the right spot there, right? I think about that too.
yeah,
And you're right. As much as you could have had experiences where you build products that did not, succeed as much as you would want, right?
yeah,
It is, what are you doing right now? Do you understand? What are you gonna do in the future, right? What's your legacy? Like, yeah,
yeah.
that's absolutely on point.
So that's what scares me the most. So at this point, I'm just going to ask if there's any questions from our live joiners on Zoom. I've not seen any question in the chat box, but I'm just gonna ask if there is any in three, two.
Oh, I have one. Why are you
Oh.
counting down? Okay.
Hi, Edna.
Should have started from 20.
Oh, really? Okay, please
Yes.
go on with your question.
Okay, my question is, you guys keep talking about getting to know what the customer wants and understand what they need. And so I'm asking as a layman, how do I know that? Who supplies me that data? Do I have an interview with these sets of customers? Do I go out in the market and say, oh, we would like this kind of product, and what do you think? So how do you get this data to understand what the customer needs? You already understand the business values, right? Because you work there. How do you get the data from the customers? So that's my question.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I would try and just speak to like the important points. So there are two types of data that you're working with as a product manager: quantitative, qualitative.
Yep.
Now, if you have an existing product, you can look at quantitative data. That is, for example, certain metrics. For example, what are users doing at different points in your products? I think one thing you can look up that will be helpful is something called the pirate metrics. Looking through the funnel, acquisition, activation, retention,
Retention.
referral,
Yep.
revenue, right?
Yep.
So look through that funnel. For example, you looking through that funnel, you would see that maybe people are, you're acquiring users, but maybe people are not doing the key things they need to do. So people are not getting activated, or people don't come back to your product, right? Or maybe people are not talking enough about your products,
Mm.
right? And then, or maybe it's not just making enough money, right? So that's one. So you can look at quantitative data that way. Of course, quantitative data could be surveys, right? So the difference between a survey and a customer interview is that a survey is you gathering quantitative data. So you don't ask open-ended questions in surveys. You ask closed-ended questions like, things that give you numbers,
How
right?
often do you use
And then,
this on a scale of 1 to 10? Just
exactly.
yeah.
So that's how you gather quantitative data, right? And this is something that you do a lot. Now, when it comes to qualitative data, you're talking about speaking to customer interviews, having open-ended conversations with your customers, right? So you asked about how do you know what people really want. So if you understand the types of data you're working with as a product manager, I think the other thing to identify is something called the 4 risk areas to address, right? And this is, really understand what customers want is bordered around product discovery, right? And continuous discovery.
Yep.
And there are 4 key things you're trying to understand, right? 1, is it desirable? Like, is this feature something that is desirable? Is this something that customers are willing to pay money for? So a lot of times, for you to understand that, you want to actually ask this question specifically. Are you willing to pay money for this? That's if you're working in a B2C or maybe a B2B, right?
So you're
So
saying B2C, business to customers or consumers, right? Or
yes,
business offering value to business, B2B, for those that don't
yeah,
really, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so you want to ask specifically, is it desirable, right? Or maybe, for example, you put a prototype together, right, and you put it in front of your customers and see how they respond to it, right? And of course, you're starting with the context of the problem you're trying to solve, right? So that's the first thing. Is it technically feasible, right? Can we build it, right? Is another question to ask. Is it usable? Would your user be able to use this, use this solution? And is this business viable? Does it deliver value to the business? But I think the 2 very important ones to really know. Other ones you can struggle through it and still figure it out. Like, for example, you can deal with usability later. I'm not saying deal with it later, but you can deal with usability later as a product manager if you figure out value. Because if your product is valuable, there are many products we use that we don't like.
True. I tell you, I was going to say that. Like, they have horrible interfaces, but they just keep
Yeah,
providing the value as seamlessly as possible.
exactly. For example, choose not to use your bank app.
I mean,
Right.
yeah.
So you can sometimes figure out usability later, right? If you figure out the value, right? So I think in answering that question in all is you want to constantly speak to your customers. There are a number of frameworks that help you to figure these things out. For example, like I mentioned, product discovery. So you want to always start from the outcomes. What am I trying to achieve? What is the value that we're trying to deliver? Right? Then go speak to your customers and understand what they're trying to do. And then you start to figure out, okay, how do I drive value for this customer in a way that gives my business? An example, say, for example, maybe you're working on an education company and maybe they're focused on marketing students, right?
Yeah.
And then your company is trying to drive revenue, right? Maybe they want to make so revenue in this year. But you have marketing students, they are trying to grow their career, right? They want to earn this position, get this job, right? And then maybe they've been trying to find marketing professionals to help them through the journey, right? So you as a product manager could decide that let me build a product that helps marketing students or people that are just coming up in the in the marketing industry to match with professionals, right?
Yeah.
And for example, maybe they pay subscription fee that way. So if, of course, this is an idea, right? You have to go and now validate it. Would they really want to pay for, pay a subscription fee to have access to a professional or to a professional course, right? Or to to a certain learning path, right? That would help them reach their goal.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're able to do that, your subscription revenue model would make money for the business, right? You're delivering value to the customer because now you are connecting them with professionals, right? And everybody's happy.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah. So I think that's a simple example to give in that regard, right?
Great. I'm just going to add, I think one more thing to what Toby has beautifully explained, really, is to go out there with an open mindset. That is, you are going with a predefined outcome that you want to achieve, but you are open-minded as well. And don't be scared of getting turned down or hearing unfavorable responses. In fact, that should excite you even more because you're expecting them to respond this way and you are getting this other response, and that's now permeate across 90% of your customers. It's telling you that there's something you are not considering. Then if you consider that thing that they are responding towards, that could actually be where your business should be tending towards. That tells you that this is the real need and people are willing to pay for it. So just be open-minded, keep all biases behind you when you're trying to engage your customers. I think we've got one more question.
Please, I just want to add one more thing, just
Okay.
one more little thing to that. When I started in product management, I used to hear the thing of never, don't let your customers tell you what to build. I used to feel like, but is the customer using it now? Won't they know? It had actually taken me having to experience it to understand that never let your customers tell you what to build. Like, don't get solutions from your customers. What you want to get from your customers, focus on the problem they're trying to solve and how they're already solving it right now.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important because if you miss it there, if you a lot of times you build what your customer asks you to build, it's not, you build it and then they won't use it.
True.
And then you wonder, you're not the one that told me you wanted it,
True. It's very interesting that you should mention it because that draws my mind back to a post I saw one time about Henry Ford's quote saying if customers were asked what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. Right? And in that scenario, so really you take in their responses, but you're not doing exactly what they want, but it's informing you that there's something you've not considered. Because if you are giving them an alternative to a horse, what they really want as an outcome is that it should be faster and get me to where I'm going quicker than a horse would. Not really saying that you should go and look for a faster horse and sell to them. So that would now inform that, okay, how do I build a product that provides this kind of value to them? Because definitely, if you get them a faster horse, at some point they will need a more faster horse, something more faster, and you keep going down the rabbit hole. Then you explore other opportunities. From there, you can get a solution that really ties into the business offering that you are proposing in the first instance. So, yeah, thank you very much, Toby, for that. Unfortunately, the person that wanted to ask the question has dropped off the call, so I'm guessing it's an
I
internet
still have
issue.
one more question, if that's fine.
Okay, are you able to take one more question, Toby?
Oh yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, please go on.
Okay, so if you're planning to, well, I think if you're planning to go into project management now, like what are the key skills that you need to acquire? Or how do I put it? What do you need to know? Data analysis and stuff like that. What do you need to succeed in that field as a project manager?
Products manager, you mean?
Yeah, product manager.
Okay, okay. I mean, a lot of people keep mixing the two. Toby, do you want to go for that?
Yeah. So I mean, project management is an aspect of product management as a product manager. Yeah. So okay. So I think what comes to mind is, there are three. So there's this popular Venn diagram when people are trying to explain product management, and it borders on user experience, business, and technology, right? So you as a product manager, you want to understand, you want to have an understanding. But again, you don't have to understand all these things completely, but you have to understand how, of course, what is good user experience, for example, right? Because you'll be working with designers, you're trying to design the product, to be giving feedback, on the product you're building. So having an understanding of what is good user experience, understanding technology, right? And this is when it comes to technology, it's a very dicey conversation, because when people are like, you don't need to know how to code, you need to know how to code and all of that. But the thing is, you need to understand technology. You need to have an idea of how it works, right? Because how would you effectively work with an engineering team, for example, if you do not understand it, right? For you to achieve your own aim as a product manager, you want to have an understanding, so you're able to guide and work with that team. And then, of course, understanding the business, right? I think our conversation today has sort of bordered around this. But when you now, when you bring it back home, there are a number of things, there are a number of frameworks and, processes in place. For example, how do you get to writing a product requirement document, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things when I started product management, right? If you want to build a product, so I asked myself a question: if you want to build a product and you want to write a product requirement document, how do you start, right? Like, where do you start from? Like, do you just think up the features that, okay, I think you should have this, and you just write it down? But there are frameworks, like, for example, doing story mapping, for example, right? Or, there are other processes, right? So I think the basics of getting into product management is, across this Venn diagram, understanding what user experience is, understanding what technology, understanding what business is, and understanding how to drive value to the business, understanding what it needs to drive value to the customer. I don't think we're able to exhaust what it is step by step, but it sort of borders around, all of the things that I just mentioned.
That's fabulous.
Josh.
That's fabulous. Yes, I'm just going to add on the technology side, which I think is the most scary aspect. Like Toby said, you don't really need to know how to code, but you need to understand how technology works in terms of infrastructure, the value it offers, and every other thing. I mean, reading something like Software Engineering by Ian Somerville, that book alone has really helped me. I'm not an
Yeah.
active software engineer. I wasn't an active software engineer, but I was able to communicate with software engineers efficiently. In fact, recently I was having a conversation with one of my engineers at work, and the guy was like, it's like you're working as an encyclopedia, because I was talking about design patterns, talking about high level software engineering. And
Right. Right.
I have no I don't have any proficiency when it comes to actually implementing those codes, but I know the bits
Yeah.
and
I've tried.
pieces that gets it
Yeah.
working. I know how you should do it to get it working.
Yeah.
And so that ties
Yeah.
strongly into the other two aspects of your Venn
Yeah.
diagram and makes you a well-rounded product manager. So really,
Yeah.
technology, just go and start reading things that are high level, talking about architectural design of technology stacks, looking at things that, because when you go to your Scrum ceremonies, you are really not going to get into the details with your engineers. You are overstepping your bounds. You should only be able to
Yeah.
advise them
Exactly.
and say, okay, have you
Yeah.
guys considered this? Then they would talk about the
Exactly.
details and say, okay, we may want to use
Yeah.
Python or use Java. We implement
Yeah.
it this way. But you are just going to be like, okay, if you want to do this, would you consider using, throw some words there. When I was talking about polymorphism and object-oriented programming, the guy was so interested in
Right.
knowing.
Right.
But when you keep me in front of
Right.
a computer, I can barely implement all of those things, right? But I know how they should work. And these are things that should interest you as a product manager, irrespective of your level. Even if you're an expert, you should keep looking at this evolving technology as well. What is happening? What's the
Exactly.
newest tech stack? What's the new thing
Yeah.
that can help your team? Because at the end of the day, you're not only addressing, like Toby mentioned some point in our conversation, you're not only addressing customer pain point and business value, you have to also care about your team. And if there's any way you can support them to get their work done efficiently, really, They would really appreciate that. So I'm just going to allow for a question by Dubanja. Are you able to unmute and ask your question? That will be the last question, then we'll wrap up.
Please kindly say your name too.
Yes, because he
I'm good.
posted in the chat and
Okay.
his
Hello, can
network
you hear me
dropped off.
now?
Yes.
Yeah, good day, guys. Joshua and Mr. Oluwatobi Omotosho. Yeah, my name is
Hey.
Olabanji.
Right.
Yeah. So actually, I'm a newbie to product management. I started, I started having interest in product management last year, and I've actually done like 2 different courses on it on Udemy actually. So my question is this: I haven't had the opportunity to work in any organization yet as a product manager. So, and I also overheard when you're saying that you've interviewed some couple of people and that they did not meet up to standard of your expectation. You understand? So now, someone like me that I haven't had the opportunity to do a practical work before in this field, do you understand? How will I, grabs, like how will I level up to the expectation of product managers? If peradventure I even have an interview, how do I level up?
Wow. Thank you very much for that question, Banji. So before Toby jumps on it, when when Banjo was asking the question, what came to mind was, this thing about people asking you to have X number of experience when you're a fresh graduate out of school, and nobody wants to hire a fresh out of school graduate that doesn't have experience. And the question is like, how do I get experience if I'm still in school? Right? Or people are always shy of hiring people that do not really have experience. Everybody wants an experienced person, but nobody is willing to give you the first chance to start getting experience as someone that is a clean slate. You've got no ink on your tabula. I mean, it's a dicey situation. Unfortunately, Toby has dropped off the call, so maybe I'll just start talking about the what I think you should do. Okay, welcome back, Toby. So I was going to start answering the question, but as luck would
Okay.
have it,
Right.
you're here. So just ride on
Okay.
it.
Thank you very much. Sorry again. Okay. So, I think it's really simple, and it's what I've been the same advice I've been giving every new product manager. Right now, it's this: start building. Like start. You don't need to be a part of the company to build a product, right? And of course, you think of, because in the past, for you to build a product, you had to know how to code and all of those things. But right now, you don't. There are no code tools that you can use and things like that. But what makes that difficult is, of course, you don't. How do I go about it? How do I build a product, right? So finding a mentor, right, is important. Finding a mentor that will guide you through building your own product. Because the only way you're going to be able to, I think the only way you're going to be able to really scale through an interview, for example, starting out fresh, is you need to understand, you need to have done something product, you need to have built something, right, by yourself. Because building something will help you understand how, making mistakes, understanding what to do and not to do, just putting you in that space to make decisions as regards the product. It will help you speak to customers and all of that, right? And I put a program together. We've done 2 batches. It's just work has been crazy, so we haven't done the 3rd batch yet. But there are like 9 people already, lined up. But one thing that they do is, they go out, like they have to speak to actual people, they are building an actual product, use a no-code tool. That will help you understand all the concepts, like setting a vision, defining strategy, and all of that, writing product requirements, building the product, and working with all of the tools. You want to start doing that before you get your job, right? And that would just really enrich you.
Yeah,
on your profile, and
Yeah, I totally agree with Toby. You have to do something. And even when you've set those foundations and you're ready to go into the industry, you could start targeting volunteering,
yeah,
internships, having
yeah,
someone take you under their wing so that your name can
yeah,
be attached to a product. And beyond your name being attached to the product, you gain experience, real
yeah,
viable experience of working on
yeah,
this product with that person, you know. So these are the things that over time make up your portfolio. And when you look back and see how much you've learned, how much you've accomplished, you realize that yes, now I'm ready to start applying for actual product management jobs. So for a start, you could
yeah,
start with your own project, do a product on it, and then look for
yeah.
someone that is working on a product and just partner with them. Even if it's for free, you volunteer with them just so that you get the
Exactly,
experience
exactly.
and have something
Yeah,
that has your name on it. Because these are things that will be asked
yeah,
of you when you go for interviews. Nobody wants to come and hear that, oh,
exactly.
I've done 10 courses or 200 courses. What have you built?
Yeah,
What have you
yeah. What
built?
have you built? What have
So
you
that will
built?
always be the question. And trust me, like he said, like Toby said, there are no code tools that you can use to build something simple, but this thing would get you out there in the
Yeah,
open, speaking to
exactly.
actual users, defining product requirement documents, setting product vision, having a product strategy, looking at metrics for your product success, product discovery, continuous interviews, all of these things would then I think one thing people always forget too when applying for a job, you have to always take your cover letter very seriously because this is where you get to say what your CV has
Talk about.
helped you gain, right? Because in your CV, you could say, work with this person, responsible for blah, 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 blah. But the job wants a product manager to drive business value. It is in your cover letter that you get to tell them that while working with these people, I was able to do this XYZ. I learned this. I completed this course, which also added this experience to, and helped me be efficient. That's where you get to say what you have because trust me, if you're able to get that going and people that the recruiters invite you for an interview, you just need to buttress and write over what you said in your cover letter and on your CV. So I think that would really help you boost your chance because by the time you're coming in, you've set a mindset on your recruiters that you know what you're doing. You've not just only gone through different projects just to build a portfolio, you've actually learned from them. And that is going to translate into the value you would offer that business as you join them if they would give you the opportunity. And that's all you need. You need your first yes. The first one opens paths to many others. So I hope that helps. Uh,
Exactly,
I,
exactly.
I'm drawing a line here so that we've overrun the time. And the
Right.
last thing here would be, Toby, do you have an advice, just one line that you would tell product managers, whether they're experts or enthusiasts, what you can advise them on from your experience, of course.
Right. I think one word comes to mind: be intentional. Be
Mm,
very intentional.
right.
Be very intentional. Like, be intentional about the products you build, and see, if you're intentional, you would be curious, right?
Mm,
You
yeah.
it will spark your curiosity to really want to learn, to really want to figure out how do I do this well, right? So intentionality really would drive the passion to see your work as a product manager as a work of really transforming people's lives, because that's what
Mm,
products do, right? And I think of it like this: that in Africa we have a lot of problems, right? And the product managers that will come up that are going to solve these problems have to be intentional product managers, people that are not really just doing it for, of course, we all want to get paid, but
yeah.
beyond the paycheck, right?
Mm,
We're really intentional about building products. Like Josh said, leaving a legacy, right? That calls for a lot of intentionality.
mm. Thank you so much. That resounds well with me, and I'm going to hold on to it. I think that's one of the things I said as my resolution. I'm not one for resolutions in every new year. I mean,
Right.
but that's one of the things, as far as resolutions go, that's one thing I want to be doing, being deliberate and being intentional about the things I do. Enough of
Mm,
doing things spontaneously or shabbily, but you have to be intentional to ensure that the intended result is achieved
yeah.
at the end of the day. Thank you so much, Oluwatobi, for your time.
Thank
I've
thank you
learned
very much.
so much. I've heard a lot, and it has gone a long way to inform me about the next steps as a product manager and what exactly a product manager is doing and is meant to do. I'm talking about in practice, not in theory or in principle. And I hope every other person
Right.
that listens to this podcast would learn as much as I have. And so until next time, which is going to be in
Yeah.
a month's time, I do wish you the best of luck in your endeavors. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a